Oh no, it froze again.
So, hello, everyone. My name is Jerome Braggs. I am more awakened, delicious lives. And more so from the perspective of learning how to love ourselves more deeply and how to surrender our lives over to the guidance and the wisdom and the energy of the divine. I know we hear a lot about, a lot of spiritual teachers, a lot of coaches out there say, love yourself, or they say, just let it go. But there are very few people out there who are actually teaching you how to do those things. Like, really, what does loving yourself really take and what does it look like? And what does letting go really take and what does it look like? And this is the place every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern at 10 a.m. Pacific time that we come together and learn how to live more awakened lives through understanding what self love actually looks like and surrender actually looks like. And I'm doing that not only through teaching you what I've learned in my own journey and what I've learned through coaching hundreds of people around the world, but also off bringing to you amazing, juicy, delicious spiritual teachers and personal transformation experts out there who have some wisdom in these areas to help us understand how to journey our own spiritual paths better and how to unfold our lives into something more delicious and awakened. And today is just one of those days. It's just one of those shows where I have the honor to present to us one of those spiritual teachers. She's a very good friend of mine. I just love having a conversation with her. As a matter of fact, the last conversation I had with our guest today just opened my eyes personally to some things that I needed to transform in my own life and deepen my awareness of some things that I was already teaching. So every time I have a conversation with her, something juicy comes out and some change for my own life comes about. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with her today. And our guest today is no other than Gitanjali Hemp. Gitanjali is a spiritual teacher, a healer, and founder of Source Healing. .net, which I know is going through a change, undergoing a change and a transformation of its own. I'll let her kind of describe that a little bit more. But without further ado, I want to introduce you all to Gitanjali Hemp.
Thank you, Jerome. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. And I just want to reflect back to you that conversation, we had a conversation several months ago, and it sowed some deep seeds for me too, and brought so much wisdom and unfolding for my own and deepening in my own process and path and journey. And I'm excited to see what we come up with here together again today with.
Yes, yes. I know initially we were going to talk about today's show. We're going to talk about initially what it takes to as you travel along your spiritual path, as you're going higher along your spiritual path, the phenomena that as you go higher, you must also root deeper. We're going to talk about that. But also, there's this thing that I love that actually came out a little bit in the last conversation that you talked about the horizontal and vibrational alignment and actually being more of your soul self into the world, bringing that into the world and the impact that that actually has when we do that. So I really am excited about talking about that. But before we get to that space, before I just give you that space, I want to give just for all of you all who are tuned in live or who are going to be watching live. Just on the right hand side, it's the comment area. If you have anything that comes up for you, any questions that come up for you, any aha moments that come up for you, or comments, please put them into the comment section. I call that section the angel section. So please put that into the angel section there and let us know, either where you're from or what what hit you that Gitanjali or something I may have said, may have done, or any questions you may have for either one of us, put those there. And if you have some wisdom you'd really like to share, you have later on in the show, probably the last 20 to 15 minutes of the show, I'm going to open up the seats here and you'll see a seat that will say open seat. And that's the soul seat. And if you have something specifically that you'd like to share live, or if you have a question you'd like to ask Gitanjali or to myself, and you'd like to come onto the show live, when we open that seat up, please feel free to click on that, and I'll bring you into the show. Also, on the left-hand side, if you see right underneath the title of the show, it says "Tweet a Little Bird," "Tell a Little Bird." you can tweet the show out to your Twitter followers. You can let them know that the show is happening, or if there's an aha little juicy bit that you got, you can tweet that out to your Twitter followers. So again, the angel seat is the comment section. If you're watching us now, if you have any comments, any questions, any ahas that you'd like to share, please put that there. In the last 20 minutes, I'm going to open the soul seats, and you can come on live if you have any wisdom or questions you want to talk about live. As well as if you look at on the bottom right hand side of the picture of my picture and Gitanjali's picture, you see these little hands doing like this. So if either one of us is sharing anything that you feel is really juicy or is resonating with you, or you have a breakthrough or a personal aha from that, if you just click on those little hands, it kind of lets us know that what we're sharing is resonating with you, or to go deeper into what we're sharing. It's just kind of a in-time personal interaction with us to let us know that what we're sharing is resonating, and it's worth repeating or worth going deeper into. So without further ado, I'd love to start, Gitanjali, with just actually, let's go a little deeper into what you do. I know I shared just a little bit because I wanted to give you a more opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about what you do as a spiritual teacher, healer, and founder of Source Energy, of sourcehealing.net.
So I have a center in SoCal, California called the Center for Source Healing, and I've developed a modality over the last many years, an energy healing modality called Source Healing. That's what the name it has been going by, but it's going through an evolution and change. The name's changing, and the whole sense of what we're offering is shifting. The energy healing modality works a lot with really the limitless potential of Source. And that if we stay engaged and connected to that in multiple different ways, our life becomes something that's beyond us and moves through us in ways that are graceful and beyond what we could ever dream possible. And that we always have the capacity to be engaged and connected and supported by something so much bigger and so loving and so in our best interest at all times. And so we just learn a whole bunch of tools and techniques of how to engage with that to keep our mind and our awareness connected to that potential and that reality. So Source Healing has had a rich experience. We do year and a half long trainings for professionals as well as for individuals who want to deepen their own personal practice. And one of the things that I like to say about what Source Healing has been, and what I believe the name is going to be Santara, and that's what we're bringing forth, Santara system, and is that it really brings the mystical and the soul essence of what we are as humans into a way that we can talk about it in this current time that's not completely wrapped up in the dogma of lots of different religious traditions, but really gets to the essence of what it is to be human, and gives us a way to dialogue about that and bring that into awareness in lots of different fields. Like, I think that, what we think our humanity is, or what the common culture talks about as what it means to be human, is just a very limited aspect of what it really means to be human. We have our souls and our energetic bodies and our emotional aspects and our spiritual selves, and we don't really have a language for that. And I foresee that it would be amazing and wonderful if we did have a language for that could go into education and into medicine and into therapy and into all these different places. I think that this world would be a really different place if we could really speak to and acknowledge and come from those levels of being. And that's a little bit what we strive for with the work that we're doing at what is becoming Santara system.
Juicy. So I already just want to dive into some things just off of what you said. So, in my last show, I talked about the 3 steps for rising higher when the shit hits the fan. And one of those steps was to really surrender, to really and to surrender, knowing that there is this source, which I call God. There is this source that really loves you, right? And that wants your highest good and the highest capability and possibility for your life to express itself, right? And that's something that you said, as you opened up about the limitless capability of Source, and that there is this presence, this energy that is loving. And I really want to give you an opportunity to talk about that more, because I think in my work, what I have come to understand, and even just in my own journey, let me not even talk about anybody else. Let me own my own journey. The thing that began to break open my life was when I began to really accept that there was something, that I was connected to something higher, bigger, wiser, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but not just connected to that, but that it really loved me
Mm-hmm.
and what that
Mm-hmm.
means. So, can you talk about what that means to you, and how your understanding of that and in your work and in your own
Yeah,
path?
there's so many ways to speak to that, but one of the ways I would talk about that is that, if we can really settle into that thing, like it's an advanced practice. It's the most simple thing and it's the most complex thing ever. If we could really settle into the knowing that we are always held, that our best interest is always being looked out for, whether or not we understand or could see what that is or means. If we could feel that, everything in our system begins to change. Our nervous system recalibrates. The way we choose to engage with people changes. What we talk about, what we see, how we feel, what we think, everything begins to change. And as that change takes place, we begin to embody that love, and we begin to become an emanation of that love. And 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 then it's not only God out there, it's God in our own hearts moving out, or source in our own hearts moving out into the world in different ways. And I think the journey is one of cleaning ourselves out and allowing that love in deeper and deeper, that awareness and that presence. And I think that's kind of, going back to what we were going to talk about, is like that ascending and descending. It's kind of like this weaving. We go up and we realize we have a connection to source, we have a connection to this lovingness, and then we come into these limited places inside of ourselves, these little pockets that don't believe in their capacity to be loved, or in their own worth. And then we have to weave that understanding and that knowing into those places. And it's like going up and getting a deep breath and weaving it in deeper, and going up and getting a big breath and weaving it in deeper, until it touches every part of ourselves and every part of our lives, even the ones that seem like the places that are the least deserving or the least capable. And I think that's a lot what that journey and process is like. And when we can really do that well, life really begins to take on a whole other feeling and direction in a lot of cases, I think, too.
There's something. mm, there's something that came through in my meditation today, and I want to. It just speaks exactly to what you just said, and I think you can go really deeper into this. So, there's a shifting that's happening in my work as well, and one of the things that's shifting is I was revealed the four cornerstones of the soul, in which my work is about helping people live more awakened, delicious lives, but to journey through the soul. And I've had this clarity about there's four cornerstones in the soul, and one of them is definitely self-love, and the other one is definitely surrender. But what I'm coming to understand more with working with individuals and in my own life is that they're first, before you can actually do the work of loving yourself and like really doing the work of trust, of surrender, there has to be this awareness of who you really are and the connection to source that you really have. And as you were talking about like bringing that energy down into the parts of you that feel the most undeserving or the most unworthy and unlovable, how important is it to you? Because this was a new kind of aha-ness for me today. So I'm just kind
Mm-hmm.
of just touching my hands into this. How important is that to you to do the work of understanding that there is this source that just wants to hold you, right? And that what that relationship is to source for you.
I think it's crucial, honestly, and I think that people will name it different ways, and people will connect to it and engage with it different ways. Some people will call it God, some people will call it Great Spirit, some people will call it Great Mystery, some people will call it the divine. And I don't think those are all the same thing necessarily, but I do think they're aspects of the same thing, they're flavors of the same thing. And I think in some way there has to be a surrender and a trust and a relationship with something that's bigger than ourselves. And I think that's a starting point. And I do think, I don't know how to do this work without having that connection as a foundation. In the way that we work with it, you know, we generally stay away from the religious terms. And so we talk about it as resource, and we're really working in the energy. And the way I teach with my students is that you cannot dive deep into wounds or hard places and reorganize them until you have a resource field big enough to meet and contain and hold the wound. And so in the way that I work, we do dive deep and dig into things, but only once resource field is established, because otherwise it becomes re-traumatizing and re-wounding to continuously go into things that you don't have a capacity to hold, and nothing big enough is there to contextualize the experience. So.
Okay, so I want to come back to the container and what the container looks
Yeah.
like. Actually, let's go there first. And then I want to ask you, because I know we started with the vertical and horizontal planes and like the place where they meet. And I really want to dive into what those planes actually are, right? But I want to, you just brought something really juicy. So let's talk about this container. Like when we're having what I see a lot is people dive into, especially people that are beginning on their spiritual path. They have this awareness, have the awareness that there is some wounding there.
Yeah.
There are some messaging that needs to be released. And there is this predilection to try to dive into all of that at one time, right? And what I see, as a matter of fact, I just had a session with someone yesterday. I was working with someone yesterday, and she wanted to move really fast. She had some issues going, and she just wanted to move fast. And I said to her, you're wanting a quantum leap, and while quantum leaps are possible, they're really uncomfortable. They're really, really painful if you don't have the space to handle that. So can you talk about that? Like, what is the space? Why is that important to have such a container?
Yeah.
And what happens when you try to move and the container's not there?
Yeah. All right. Okay, there's so much to say about this. Okay, so if you try to move and the container's not there, it's like quicksand. You don't actually get anywhere really. Like, so you end up re-wounding and re-traumatizing. You end up reinforcing the pattern or story you're trying to get out of. And so even in wanting something to change so quickly, there's two things that I want to say about that. One is it's kind of like this art therapy idea or something, that anything we do is kind of how we do everything. The way we do one thing is how we do everything, right? In some way. So if we go into healing and we really just are trying to take on more than what we can handle, a lot of the time I'll see that when someone comes from an abuse cycle of some sort, and it's actually another way of reinforcing the abuse cycle. So we can use anything to hurt ourselves, including trying to heal too quickly, because underneath that, fundamentally, there's a lack of love for where we are at the moment. So that's one way of seeing it. But another way of seeing it is that it is my belief that for real and lasting healing to happen, there has to be a level of acceptance with what is. Like, there has to be an ability to sit with it, whether or not we really are enjoying it fully, but an embracing and accepting of what is. And sometimes we're trying to run away from the pain. And so we want to heal all right now immediately because it's too painful to be with what is. And I think that in itself is a healing moment, to have the capacity to be able to just be with for a moment what is. So those are two things. One of the things that I'll frame with people, or when we're doing work together, we do kind of like a spoken intentions that are kind of like prayer work. And what we'll say, what I like to say a lot is, as things move, may it be at a pace that is graceful and comfortable for all that you have going on in your life. So another thing is that oftentimes,
hold on a minute. We got to repeat that, because that's a tweetable moment, and so I want to make sure I tweet that out. But that was just really, really juicy. So could you repeat that?
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
but something about that, as the healing unfolds, as the reorganization happens, that it happens in a way and at a pace, in a graceful way and pace, that our life can integrate and manage, given all the responsibilities we have. So we're not in a time where we're living in a monastery or in a cave or in some kind of place where we're just going and doing the spiritual work. We have a context, we have bills to pay, we have families, we have obligations. And so we get to take part of our time and our energy in doing this deep transformational work. And we also have to be able to meet the things in our life to a sustainable degree. And what I also find is these big leaps that happen and changes in growth and healing, they come pretty effortlessly and easily after a foundation of resources created and built. It's not that we're not going to go for that, but sometimes really slow, stable movement for a very short period of time then creates a platform where a vast movement occurs. And just one more way of trying to say this too is that sometimes I think in our psyches, there's a rubber banding or a pushback. If we push too hard and too fast to try to kill the ego or try to reorganize something that we don't like about ourselves, it comes back with a vengeance, kicking and screaming, and really hijacks our life for a period of time. And so in order to kind of not go there, again, it's kindness and lovingness. Can we be kind and loving with these parts of ourselves as we hold their hand to begin transforming them into a more useful and aligned way of being? And that tends to be really sustainable and create quick and long-lasting shifts.
I want to go back to something you talked about, which is a part of creating this container.
Uh-oh, I lost you. I can't hear you.
Because I hear...
Uh-oh, I think we lost you. I'm hoping you come back real soon.
Hello?
Hi.
Come on.
Yeah, I got you now. I hear you now.
Can you see me?
I see you. Yeah, got you now. But I didn't get anything about the last thing you
Hello?
were saying. Hi, you see me? Uh-oh. I see you. Uh-oh.
Hello?
Yeah, I got you.
Can you all hear me or see me now, by any
I can hear
chance?
you
What
and
happened
see
here?
you.
What's going on? Okay. I think I've lost Gitanjali now.
Uh-oh.
1 second. I know Blab is in, it's still in beta, so we have some technical difficulties with it. So give me 1 second here.
Hi, you see me? Hello?
Hey, can you hear me and see me now?
Yeah, I
Okay, sorry. The
do.
Blab is still in beta, so sometimes we have some technical difficulties with it that are unexplainable, but we'll work through those. So I was asking you before we got disconnected that you were talking about the container space, and there's one thing you talked about there that I know as a spiritual teacher I've said, and I teach, but as a person on a spiritual path myself, I know oftentimes people will say this, but they don't really tell you how. And so many people get stuck in this because they have this awareness of, yeah, this may be what I need to do to create this container or at this space in my life, but I don't know how to do this. And that is like, if you could kind of give maybe like 3 sentences of how to make peace with what is.
Hmm. Oh boy. Okay. Uh, to make peace with what is really allowing it. And so it's really being with it. So we do a lot in our life to run away from what we're experiencing or feeling, right? That's like the whole thing, like addictions or movies. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to do that at times or any of those kind of things, but to really take the time and space to really look in the face what it is that we're avoiding, to really take the time to feel. And I think most of the time what happens is when we do that, we realize that our resistance was bigger than the actual feeling. And if we sit with it, we realize we're still standing and it's okay. And it's okay. And in that moment, I think there's oftentimes a doorway or a pathway of like, why is it okay? And it's because there's something bigger with us through that. I think that in those moments, it's also a good time to reach out to whatever our support systems are, meaning loving people or awarenesses or practices or prayer, and and that's the beginning of the weaving. So being willing to sit with the discomfort or the pain, releasing the resistance, just doing it anyway, moving right through the resistance, and then weaving in the love from whatever of those places can help us generate the love in a place that's harder for us to find it.
Hmm. Yeah, I found that when we do that, especially when I've done that, and I say this probably almost in every talk that I give because this is the truth that I found that there are very few things that I know of that lead to a miracle every time
Mm-hmm.
in your life. That doing that or embodying this particular thing or practicing it, the result is something miraculous every time. And one of those things is making peace with what is. I
Mm-hmm.
think when we lean into what I found is when I've leaned into, or when the people in my life, when they lean into what life is currently offering you, and we don't fight it or resist it or try to hide from it or escape it or run from it in some way, but you lean closer into the center of it. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
lean in, right?
Yeah.
That something miraculous happens.
Yeah.
One, that's where God is, source is, the divine. I think the presence of God, the energy of God is like right in the center of what you're experiencing always, right? And then the second thing is when you lean in, you stop fighting, right? And then the natural flow of source can take over, which is just always just a beautiful thing. So I thought that was really an important piece to know, and that's such a beautiful thing of way you said to do that. Because again, I think it's one of my answers to everything. It's like somebody's having a problem, they come to me. It's one of my top three answers. It's like make peace with it, like so it can make peace with you, right?
Yeah.
Make peace with it so that thing can make peace with you. Stop fighting it, lean into it, understand it, so you can get the message that is here to receive, and you can experience the presence and energy of source in the midst of that. And so I think it was such a beautiful thing that you offered there. Um, so in just in flow with that whole thing, I want to go back to that what you talked about, the horizontal and the vertical alignment. So before we talk about like what it is, what the alignment is, and what it leads to, can you talk a little bit about what the different aspects of the vertical and the horizontal are?
Yeah, so the vertical and horizontal axis has been used in all kinds of different traditions, even with the cross or in different Buddhist or different traditions. And I think the most simple way of saying it is that the vertical alignment is kind of our soul, our spiritual alignment and connection. And the horizontal alignment is kind of our worldly engagement. And what what I'm passionate about right now in terms of those two things is that what I see is that there's a great deal of people who are very sincere and have been exploring this vertical alignment and have been getting stronger and stronger and are working that and learning how to be more in alignment with their soul self. And then we have our lives that are going on, and sometimes they're not fully lined up together. But also sometimes one will get stronger than the other, or even kind of in different um, planes, so to speak. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but what's really interesting to me is that the people on the planet who do have a really strong horizontal expression oftentimes don't have a strong vertical current behind it. And I think if we can really line those two up in a really conscious way, and if those of us who have been cultivating a really strong vertical alignment line up this horizontal alignment and allow ourselves to have the power that we actually have the capacity to wield and to have, I think that it's about giving back and transforming the environment and the culture and the world that we're living in that is in a very soul aligned way. So like where those 2 points coincide, I feel like we can find absolute soul alignment if we
Mm.
work it right. And if we can express from that place in powerful and impactful ways, I think we can really transform our world in ways that it's really, really needing at this time. So yeah.
So what does it look like? Actually, let me ask you a question that's coming in through the angel section,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go to this question next. So, um, Ses Dharmendra asks, is it possible to go deeper slash higher without falling back on established religions or religious practices?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And so in the way that I work in the energy, we try to not have so much of the religious construct and connotation, and yet help people find ways to have direct experience and engagement with energy. And what we use a lot is through sound, through movement, through through meditation and visualization, through felt experience, and we can go through all these different ways. And what I really value and love is for people to have their own direct experience of their creator, or of energy, or of source, and for them to begin identifying and describing that and making meaning in the way that is most true and authentic for them. And what happens for some people is then they understand the religion they were born into in a whole new way. And for some people, they let it go completely and find something else. But making authentic meaning, I think, is where a lot of power lies.
Mm, excellent. I want to like, so you talked about the aligning the vertical and the horizontal. What does it look like? Can you give examples so that, because I know some people may out there that are watching or listening are like, okay, so how do I really know where I'm leaning more towards? Like, am I more horizontally aligned, more vertically aligned? What does it look like when you're really like taking the horizontal path, but you're not really doing the vertical work? And what does it look like when you're doing, like, give examples of kind of what that looks like when you're vertically working and not really horizontally working as
Yeah.
well?
Okay. So these are generalities, and I'm just going to say the first ones that pop into my head. There's probably other expressions. But if you have a real strong horizontal and not a strong vertical current, I would say that you're very impactful in the world. You're powerful. You might make a lot of money and move a lot of things and maybe be in leadership positions. You might be very successful, quote unquote, in life. Um, but is it contributing to the greater good? Do you feel like it's feeding your soul? Do you feel like it's really in alignment with a deeper feeling or sense that you have? Probably not. It's not lined up in those ways. So it's very much working by the rules of man in the worldly, and being successful and good in that, but it doesn't have a deeper, broader directive or purpose. And if you have a very strong vertical current and not such a strong horizontal current, there's a sense of, you feel very spiritually aligned, you really know yourself, you have a sense of what you're here for or what is true for you. There's a lot of meaning in your life and a lot of meaning in your sense and understanding of what it means to be. But maybe you're not as impactful. Maybe you don't have the money to go and have the impact, or you don't have the voice, or there's fear in having those things, or you don't really know how to navigate in the world and the systems and structures that exist in it. And what can happen too is that you can be strong in both those places, both vertically and horizontally, but they're not engaged together. So it's two very separate things. I have a very strong spiritual life and I have a very strong worldly life, but they're not together. And so something about this togetherness and the what happens when they come together in a very clear, fixed alignment is very powerful. And that's part of my personal exploration right now in my own path, and it just feels like such a rich and juicy and transformational thing.
Yeah, I love that because I see that a lot. I see, just kind of continuing in your examples, with people who are spiritual teachers, healers, intuitives, coaches, transformational people. I see that there's a huge vertical alignment there, right? They're doing their inner work. They understand who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
They understand their connection to source and all of that. But there's oftentimes in that community less of a um, vertical kind of the horizontal is what I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
horizontal um, charge. So they have this beautiful work and they have this beautiful understanding and this beautiful connection to source, but not always. And I'm not speaking for everyone, but there's predominantly a large amount of people in this community that aren't that don't have that kind of connection to get it out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Actually have their wisdom and their um, their service actually reach the people that their soul is asking it to reach, right?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, we have many examples today. I mean, there's no shortage of examples of individuals who are very strong horizontally, but not bringing in the alignment vertically. You know, you have the
Hmm.
people who are um, the political community in the United States right now is huge on that, right? It's like
Yeah.
very successful individuals, very financially successful. Well, I'll just say financially successful and abundant of individuals. They've achieved a lot of their goals probably on their to-do list and their goal list, but
Hmm.
not necessarily feeling connected to the larger aspect of who they are and not really using the higher aspect of who they are to serve humanity as a whole, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's a juicy piece, and that third piece is just it resonated so much with me because there was a time in my life where I had this spiritual community and I had my spiritual life and I had, I was doing my spiritual work, but and I had this, I was doing very well successfully in business, but it was, the two were not, they did not
Hmm.
meet. They were not shaking hands at all. And that, and when that happens, there's a sense of betrayal that you feel in the self.
Hmm.
You feel that you're not living in integrity and wholeness, and you're not honoring all the paths that you are. So this is a very important conversation to have. So how does one begin to, let's break them up. I want to break them up into the three areas that you said. So someone who is horizontally strong, but
Hmm.
not vertically, right? How do they begin? What are kind of the steps that they begin to come into that aligned place?
The steps there to me look like it depends on the individual and what they're really bringing, but it begins about doing the deeper work and getting to know what holds meaning for them, what they really want, what drives them, getting engaged with a sense of purpose, not like big purpose, this is what I'm going to do in the world, but a sense of meaning and purpose. What what is the purpose of life expressed through them, like beginning with that question maybe, and starting to navigate and open in curiosity to what wants to be heard and what wants to be shown and known and seen in relationship to that. And so it's beginning of a spiritual path, really fundamentally, and having some practices around curiosity and opening to that inside.
And what about the one who is, for those of us who are vertically but not horizontal?
So for this one, it feels more like it's displaced power. It's really about power and impact in the world. And so what I'm finding is that the core drivers or core distortions of power are things like guilt, shame, blame, sometimes frustration, so powerlessness, and a feeling of victiminess in some way or another. That's all often self-motivated, and a lot of the time it's guilt and shame. So again, it's that feeling of self-love, and it's really rewiring, reweaving, reorganizing, and integrating the guilt. Where does it come from? Where is it going? How do I eat it and transform it and digest it into something new? And as we do that, that new thing is actually power.
Mm.
So allowing ourselves, a lot of it is like, how much love do we allow ourselves? How much space do we allow ourselves in the world, and therefore impact?
And lastly, the one who is, you have both kind of strong, but they're not connected.
Mm-hmm. Um, that's an interesting weaving, and in some ways it's an easier one, and in some ways it's a harder one. So in bringing that alignment, I think there's some aha moments, rectification, realization around maybe misuses of power, and a atonement internally, and then again a forgiveness and an allowance as the horizontal comes in, and as the vertical comes in. Again, it's just weaving in that process of inquiry, of love, of prayer, of engagement, and then the two will start to come closer and closer together. So it's kind of a little bit of both, a
Hmm.
little bit of both.
Where do you see, would you say in your work and in your vision, and you're being into the world, where would you say is the call between the three, is the call that's most being asked to happen? Like, is it the are we or do you see that most people are more in the world are living on the horizontal and being asked to align the vertical, or vice versa, or is it the third one where they're just not bringing the two together?
Um, I think if I look at my practice and who I engage with, I think all three of them, it's pretty splayed in different ways. We all have different places. And it depends on what demographic. So yeah, if I'm working with people who are more in the healership world and things, but that's a small percentage maybe on the planet, then the vertical is stronger. And probably if I were to make a blanket statement, I would say in the world at large, it would be getting people on the vertical current, and helping them have an awareness of that would be helpful, because then that would also begin to take into account the people who had both, but they were kind of disjointed, because if you engaged with that in a way with mindfulness about that concept, they would start to come into greater coherence and alignment. Um, yeah, it's hard to say. I think people come from all in different ways. Yeah.
So I know you've talked about two concepts which are really important to the show. So I want to give you
Mm-hmm.
a chance to kind of talk about these two. You talked about these two concepts, self-love and kind of surrender,
Mm-hmm.
in both of these aspects, and the aspects of the alignment, the vertical, as well as the container space.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about a little bit, to you, what does self-love look like and mean to you?
Hmm. To me, on a very personal level, self-love means an allowance and acceptance of all my parts, of everything that I am, everything that I have been, and everything that I will be. And um, and really, really, really embodying that.
There's a word in there you use that to me is just, I mean, it tastes like cake to me, so delicious for me. But I know there can often be so much confusion around this word, and I know we use it in this space. For those of us who do this kind of work, this word is not a stranger, but to a lot of people, this word is a stranger. So I want to give you a chance to kind of talk about what you mean
Mhm.
by allowing. Because you said allowance
Allowing.
and acceptance of all my parts, which I love that definition. But what is the allowing aspect of that?
Hmm. My mind starts going in all these places. So I'm going to say this to start, just because I feel like I need to for some reason. But so much of when someone asks a question, my answer is both. Like there is no one definitive answer, right? For almost anything, I think. And so allowing, again, it's like accepting what is, embracing what is, being present to what is, and allowing is allowing. I'm using the word again in answering the definition. Um, it's an opening of my system. It's an opening
Mm,
of my system. That's the best way I can say it.
I love that. An
It's a
opening
it's
up
a
my
saying yes.
system.
It's a saying yes.
Mm. So surrender. I know that's a huge. I mean, in conversations we've had, just personally as
Mhm.
friends, that's come up. I know it's a huge aspect of your work. So what is surrender to you?
Surrender is letting go of my attachment to the way I think things should be. So again, surrender has this bothness to it, because sometimes surrender means being gentle and open and soft, and sometimes surrender means pushing and being present and engaged and having an edge of fierceness internally. And so surrender is me not getting in the way, saying I think it should be this way or that way. Surrender is saying, again, I accept what is, I accept what's moving through, and what is meant to be in this moment. And that comes from having a strong vertical alignment and being able to really feel that.
I think this thing is so important what you just said, that I think often gets really looked over when we look at the conversation of surrender, is that when you come from the space of which you just so beautifully said, that I'm allowing myself to believe there's another way for things to work out, right? And that I
Mm-hmm.
don't always know what that is. That oftentimes, so my personal usual way of going through the world is non-conflict, to be ease and
Mm-hmm.
peaceful and things like that. But sometimes if I'm surrendered, there will be times when what life is asking of me is to
Yeah.
be loud and to speak up and I don't think we actually honor that enough on the path. And we think
Yes.
sometimes that surrender just means that you're totally just kind of like in this bath of absolute non-action.
Yeah.
And what you just said so beautifully is sometimes surrender is more action than you've actually ever known to do before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that what you just said. I think that's really powerful because there's a lot of confusion around that, and that's sometimes you're being when you surrender. Sometimes what you when you let go, the ask that comes forth is for you to be more vocal, more
Mhm.
in action, more engaged energetically and physically and emotionally than you would have when you have previously thought.
Yeah. For sure. And I think that that goes back to talking about that vertical and horizontal alignment. We have a strong vertical alignment and we're very peace loving, we're very contained, and then we get a stronger horizontal alignment and maybe we're being asked to have a bigger voice or to step into a bigger role in a certain way. And being willing to do that is a form of surrender when it's really aligned. And one of the helpful little tools I sometimes talk to my students about is, I come from a history of dancing a lot and improvisational dance sometimes too. And that sometimes when you're in an improvisational dance or improvisational theater, you wait. You don't follow the first impulse. You don't follow the second impulse. You wait for the third impulse or the fourth impulse. And so for me, if I hear very clearly or get very clearly like move in this direction and I kind of resist, but then I hear it again and I hear it again and I hear it again, and then I can kind of like, okay, I got the message. I heard it 3-4 times. Like, all right, let's see what happens if I start moving in this direction. And and what I find is when it's a really true direction, it's not that everything's necessarily easy. There's still challenges on the path. There's always going to be challenges, no matter how advanced we become, right? But that there's a sense of it feels satisfying in a way that becomes familiar. It feels right. It feels aligned, and it's a rich, wonderful feeling.
I definitely want to give you time to closing into like the last 13 minutes or so of the show, and I want to
Mhm.
give time for people to ask questions directly.
Yeah.
But there's one thing I want to give you a chance to speak to before we open for questions is that we talked about, how to live a more soul aligned life and a little bit of the benefits. But I want to give you a chance to speak to what are the actual benefits? Like, why is this important to do? Why is this something you actually want to maybe commit yourself to doing?
Um, so one of the things I would say is that life becomes so rich, so delicious, so yummy, so fun. It really becomes fun in a whole new way. And parts of me, I'll speak for myself, parts of me that felt like there's no part of me that doesn't feel touched or expressed. There's no part of me that feels like it's on a shelf or in hiding. It feels like who I am, what I was made for, is being put to good use, and nothing feels better than that. And to actually have impact and influence in people and in their lives, to touch them in ways that, because of the nature of the work, are beneficial and empowering and creating more love and more alignment for them to feel that same way in themselves. It just feels good. From a very selfish perspective, it just feels good. And it just feels like, what else would I or anyone be doing here? And in the bigger perspective, why I feel that it's important is because I truly do believe 100% that if every one of us on this planet did this and lived in a soul aligned way, if we did that, I think all of the problems in the world would be gone. I think we would live in a way that was sustainable. We would live in a way that was harmonious. We would live in a way that was loving and kind and present on this beautiful paradise that is our home and this earth and this family that we all are here together. And I think if we could learn how to do that as individuals, this world, it would completely transform our planet. And I don't know if, when, how that could happen or will happen, but I do know that that's a direction that I am deeply driven towards.
to any one of you all who are watching us who have a question directly for Gitanjali or for me to go through this particular what we're talking about today in this show. If you have any question, you can ask it in the comment section, which is the angel section, or I'm going to open the seat up now. And if you want to come on live and you want to share something, or if something Gitanjali shared today kind of hit a personal aha for you or woke something up with you and you want to share that, please feel free to do that. So I'm going to open the seat up now. And so if the seat's there, if you're wanting to come on and say anything, please click the open seat and I'll let you onto the show. But if you have anything that you want to talk about, if you have a question for Gitanjali or for me personally, please put it in the comments section. I know I see Pursue Create said that it seems like the artist's path and the entrepreneur's path is like it goes along with the vertical and the horizontal. I know for me, I have a particular way. We're both entrepreneurs, and I think also kind of both artists in a way. So I have my own personal viewpoint on that. But what's your viewpoint, Gitanjali, on what you see most of the artist path and the entrepreneur path kind of taking down in the horizontal and vertical perspective?
I think that could be a really great description of the entrepreneurial path.
I think I lost Gitanjali. Can you all, first of all, before I say I lost Gitanjali, can you all hear and see me?
Yeah, I can hear and see you, but you can't see me.
So maybe it's me that needs to refresh, possibly.
Let's see.
Okay, Gitanjali's coming back on. So maybe
Got me? Hello? Hi.
Hi, I can see you. I was just asking you a question when kind of things froze
Yeah,
up.
I actually heard you. Yeah. So
Okay.
I would say that I think that they are actually definitely that could be one way of looking at it. And I think the entrepreneurial path in general is a horizontal path in general, not always. And I think that the artist path can be a vertical path. I don't know that it always is, but again, I think a lot of the time it can be. Yeah, that could be an interpretation. Yeah.
Good. And I know, actually, in the midst of while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, I want to kind of go back into the conversation we had a few months ago, which kind of was the initial inspiration for the show.
Mhm.
Because I think you shared something very beautiful that I know I see it happening everywhere, but I don't know a lot of people that are really aware of this phenomenon. Is that as you are going and just even to use what you're talking about and the example, the imagery of kind of higher and on this path as well, that as you're going higher on your path and as you're going your life is rising higher, that in order to sustain the height, you must also sustain a level of depth.
Mhm.
And you talked about like that, you're going to get a call. The source is going to have an ask of you that as you go higher, you're going to have to go deeper. Can you talk about that phenomenon a little bit?
I don't know, when you're saying it right now, I'm just getting really curious in your experience of it directly. I will talk about it too, but I'm wondering if you have a story or something
Yeah.
to share.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I know for sure for my life is that every time I've gone higher in my life experiences, whether I am experiencing a higher level of success, a higher level of visibility in my work, a higher level of wanting to serve, a higher level of anything, whatever it's relationships, money, anything. When I've gone to a higher level of experience with that, there tends to be right at the same timeline when I'm experiencing this height, there's a deeper call for me to go into some type of area of my
Yeah.
life, right? And so, for instance, now that I'm experiencing more, like I have this show now, I have more followers on Facebook, more people are talking about me in the world, so my name is out there more, and I am having, more visibility in the world. Something at the same time, something that's happening is I am experiencing more people that are attacking my work, that are speaking against me in some type of way. And so there's this deeper level, and it's like pushing the buttons of rejection and feelings like that. And I see we have a caller coming in, and I'm going to loop you in as soon as I finish the sentence. So you can call in. Please call in again. I'm going to loop you in as soon as I finish the sentence. Um, but there seems to be a deeper call for me to go into self love and like compassion and kindness to myself. And what it may have looked like before, like the old, probably the Jerome, the version of Jerome that existed a few years ago, would have been like stamping his hands down, saying, "But I've done work on self love, right? Or I've done compassionate work," and I might have said, "Well, man, I must be stupid. I didn't really get it," or something like that. And instead of it being not this, I didn't. Instead of me saying that didn't work before, or I didn't get that before, it's actually you did get it, but you got it for the level that you were on. You got it to sustain the level that you were on. And now, in order for you to sustain this level, there's a whole difference of self-love and compassion and kindness you have to practice when there's only two people showing up to your work.
Yeah.
And there's a whole nother chapter, a whole nother depth that's being asked of me now that thousands of people are showing up, right? And so that's kind of been my experience. Like the higher I've gone, the deeper, and it's in self-love, it's in finances, it's in, all these levels of things. The higher I've gone in my life, the deeper kind of source is asking me to take a dive into some of those things.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of like the path of the wounded healer. It's like if you want to hold that big of a space, you have to be able to hold that big of a space. So like it's like the light gets brighter almost, the beam gets brighter, and when it gets brighter, it's like, oh, the little cobwebs and dust in the corners becomes illuminated, and you got to clean that out too, right? And I think it's really true. It's absolutely true that every time we get a little bit bigger, it's like every time we up level in any way, we're going to get pushback. We're going to get resistance. And it's really our internal pushback and our internal resistance that then gets reflected to us by the outer world in order for us to clean up that place. Like, well, what do you do when people start, criticizing you or saying whatever they say, and you being able to really bring love into those places and apply it again. And I think in this kind of work, we're teaching through transmission a lot. It's like, each of us can hold what we hold because of our own direct experience, and that we really brought through the transmission of that healing in ourselves. And then we can begin to share that not only through words and language and structures, but just through our presence, essentially. And so I think as you're growing and your audience is getting bigger and you're expanding, in order to hold a current of transmission that's big enough, you have to weave that teaching into more places, so that it's a stronger current moving out into the world as well. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but I think that is part of that broadening and deepening, and it's awesome. It's great work. And it's also like that idea that, oh, I already learned this and I should be done with it. I kind of think, we teach what we most need to learn, and we learn it layer and layer like an onion forever. And every time, we grow, there's another layer to engage with and to work with. And it's almost like at some point it becomes like, oh yeah, you're on the right track. Here you go. Here's another chunk to digest. Yeah, it gets familiar.
Yeah, I love what you said, that the understanding of this is so important. That when you go higher, and this is not just for all of those who are in business. This is just in your life. Like as you're going bigger and growing higher, the parts of you that will not allow you to sustain this new level will be reflected back to you. And that's just what you said. Like the light gets brighter, the little cobweb in the corner that was okay at the last part where you were. It was okay. It was not going to wreck things, right? It was not going. That cobweb was not going to cause a wrench into the workings of how you were living at the last. But it's definitely going to do that now. Like at this level, that cobweb, that small cobweb in the corner, is gonna the shit's gonna hit the fan if you keep that over there, right? And that's the practice of like love and surrender that you talked about too. Is when you can see it's not a judgment and it's not a punishment. It's an invitation of you to live at a higher level, and this is what it's requiring.
I love that reframe. It's not a punishment. It's a invitation.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. So I know in the last little bit of time here, we have some questions for you, and I want to give you also an opportunity to talk about your how people can get in contact with you if they want to work with you. But I see Pursue Creates a great show and discussion. Thank you. Um, yes, what they think of us is none of our business. Absolutely. Seth Dharmendra says, I'm a novice in this field. Um, could you please tell me how to go deeper? What should one actually do? So I'll give you that in like one, if you can answer, I know that's like a whole nother show. So, but if you can kind of give like one tip for someone who is just now starting this out,
Yeah.
how can they go deeper, I guess,
I
is
think the
what the question.
simplest thing is going back to what we were saying earlier, which is just be present with whatever discomforts arise. I mean, your life is going to offer you the depth. You get bigger, then you're going to get some pushback and it's going to feel bad. So when that feel bad comes, just be with it. Just look at it, face it, allow it to be there, lean in, like you were saying, and find the light within it.
Yes, yes, yes. Juicy. So for those out there who are interested in your work, I know you described it a little bit in the beginning. Can you talk about a little bit about if somebody wants to
Mm-hmm.
work with you, where are the different ways in which they can dive into that
Yeah.
process and how can they reach you?
So for right now, my website is source-healing.net, and I'll post the URL in a moment. And I offer in-person sessions in Santa Cruz, California. I also do Skype sessions, which are easy to do, 45 minutes, an hour long Skype sessions. And it looks like a energy healing consult kind of therapy based, but very much working in the fields and the energy with people. I do year and a half long training. So far, they've been local, but we're right now working on creating some online content, and we're going to start a webinar series starting in March for a 6-month program. And so if you got on the newsletter, if you went to the website and got on the newsletter, you would be informed of that as that arises and comes up. And then lastly, I am offering a women's retreat in Ojai, California for only 15 women. We're halfway full from February 5th to 9th, and I'll post the URL for that too. And I think that's going to be a rich, sweet, deep dive in community with a bunch of women if anyone's interested in that.
Amazing. As always, I just love talking to you.
And I love
I
talking
get
to
filled up
you.
every time we speak, and I love the work you're doing. You are definitely expressing your soul into the world and helping other people do the same. I highly recommend your work to anyone who is watching. My personal kind of, not that you need a stamp of approval, but my personal stamp of approval to that. And yes, please, Gitanjali, while I'm doing this, if you could put the URL to your work into the comment section there, that'd be great. And also for all of you all to know again, this if you enjoyed the show, please join us every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time, where we'll be having discussions where we'll talk about, how do we live more awakened, delicious lives. And I'll be bringing more delicious and juicy spiritual teachers just like Gitanjali to the table for us to share and have a conversation with, as well as sharing some of my own wisdom and hearing some of your own personal wisdom for you to have an opportunity to join in on the hot seats and have some conversation. This is a place where we learn, where we do the real work of learning what it actually takes to really express more of our soul into the world, to really own and embody and accept who we really are, and to stop fighting and pushing against what is and lean more into the center of our lives. This is the place where we want to do that, and not just where it's all about me teaching you something, but you're teaching me, where you get to offer me your wisdom, and I learn too. I learn just as much as anybody else on all of these shows. So I'm honored to have this space where we can join together as equals and do the learning and growth that really makes a difference in our lives. Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for being here. For all of you all who are here, please go to her website. Please look at what she's doing and reach out to her. I really, again, love who she is, love what she's doing, and love who she's being. And I love all of you. As always, I love you from the deepest part of my heart. I know you are enough. I know that you are loved and lovable, deserving, worthy, and divine, and that will never, ever change. And I look forward to sharing space with you again next week. Much love.
Bye, Jerome. Thank you.
Good time to